Alrighty, why don't we get started? So, we are now at week 5. Any questions about anything we did the previous weeks? Anything at all? Okay. So, week 5 talks about lists and strings. So we already learned how to do the ifs and else's. We already, got plenty of practice with that. Then we learned about repetition, and now we're gonna get more practice with that and talk about lists. And the only real thing that is left is to talk about functions, and that's pretty much the most of the class. After that, we'll talk about files, input and output. Once we get to that, you're gonna practice all the other things up to that point. So, lists. All right. So, what are lists and how to use them? Strings, and let's get into that. Okay. Let me save this. Okay, you can see that. All right, so first of all, let's start with, I'll start with a string. All right, so let's say I have a string text. Okay, text is equal to hello world. Okay, now you already know that I can show this text like so. I can do print text equals text. Alright, and that's that. But how can I show the individual characters if I wanted to? Well, I can use the indexes. Alright, so a string is basically, alright, this is a string, which is an immutable list, which is, what does it mean to be immutable? Immutable means you cannot change the individual characters. Okay, so that's what immutable means. All right, so if I go in there, I'm going to put little comments. So this is these are the indexes. So this is index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The space is a 5, then 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the last one is a 10. So what I'm trying to say is that every character has its own number. So this is the 0, this is the 1, this is the 5, and the last one is the 10. So let's say I wanted to show the first character. Okay, so print first letter in text is, I do text, square brackets, 0. Okay, so this subscript right here, that is the index. Okay, so this right here, that is the index. Okay, if I run this thing, you're going to see that there's your letter H. And if I wanted to, I can go and I can show you the last one. So, last letter. Copy this, paste it. The last letter is going to be the 10th. And if I run it, there it is. That's your last letter. Okay. Now, what else? I can use a loop to go through this and show you every character in the string. So I can do for, let's say, character in range from, or actually before I get into that, I can show you how many, see how many characters are in the text slash string. And I can say print, let's just do it this way. So num characters is equal to len of text. Okay, and then len, so what len does is returns, you don't know what that means yet, but we'll talk about functions next week. You're going to know what it means for to have a function return a value. Returns the length, right, or the number of characters in the string. Okay, so if I go in there and I tell you that print text has num characters, and I run this thing, then you're going to see that it has 11 characters. Okay, it has 11 characters because we start at 0, right? If we're counting to 0 and there's 10 of these things, or the numbers go up to 10, 0 plus 10, you got 11 characters. Okay, so keep in mind that the last one is always one less than the number of characters that you have, right? So if I wanted to, this is the last one. So if I get this and I throw it in here, last letter in the text, how can I express this using num characters? Num characters is 11, right? And I'm trying to show 10. So all I got to do is I'm going to grab my num characters and do this -1. Run again, and there you go. Okay, you can also just do this whole thing with just this -1, same thing. Okay, so but just keep in mind that it always starts at 0. The indexes always start at 0, and they always go to 1 less than however many things you have in the list or in the string. Okay, now if I wanted to, I can use this to create a loop which is going to show me these indexes. Right? So I want to show the indexes. Alright, so this is loop to show every character in text. So I go in there and I say, okay, this loop is going to start at 0. It's going to go until the length of text, and it's going to go in steps of 1. Okay, and that's actually one of the reasons why by design these loops are meant to not get all the way to the end of the thing. So if I go in there and basically say, okay, well, I'm going to go from 0 to 11, right? 11 is however many things I have in the thing. The loop is going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10, right? It never reaches the 11. So that's the purpose of why, you know, they designed these loops like that, to go 1 less than what they're supposed to. And if I go in there and I say, okay, well, print character, or let's call it index. All right. Every index in text. Okay. And this thing is equal to index. And let's see if I can get these numbers. If I run it. And yes, I do, right? So these are my index values. And as usual, whenever you have some kind of a loop, test the thing before you try to do anything with it. So okay, these are my index values. I got those numbers. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in these values inside my text as an index. So I'm going to say, all right, character, let's do this, index, or let's just do it this way. I'm going to say text, square brackets, and then I'm going to plug in the number in there to show it to you. Close the brackets, equals, and here I'm going to put text, square brackets, index. Alright, so I'm going to show you text with a number in between, and then I'm going to show you the actual value. Okay, so now I run this thing, and these are my different characters. Okay, of course, if I wanted to, I can make this thing look a little better. I can say, all right, hold on here. We're gonna have a %2i because I want to reserve 2 spaces for this thing. I'm going to change this to %, and I guess I can just get rid of this. And I can just do this. Equals %s, because this is a string. Parentheses around this whole thing. And at the end. Alright, so what I'm telling it, we're going to reserve two digits for whatever goes in here, because I don't want to see this column shift. Alright, what are we going to insert here? We're going to insert index right in here. And then what are we going to insert here? We're going to insert the character, whatever we pull from, or whatever this is. Okay, so if I run this now, then it looks a little better. Okay, all right. So this is basic intro to strings, which are immutable lists. So let's say what else do I want to do? Maybe I want to count how many times the letter, I don't know, what do we have? L, right, appears in the string. So I'm just going to go in there, I'm going to say count is equal to 0, and then I'm going to look at these characters, right? So this piece right here, this shows me my characters. So I'm going to look at if any of these are equal to the letter L, then I'm going to count that thing. Plus equals 1, right? Also known as count is equal to count plus 1, right? I'm just going to do the shorter way. And then when this whole thing is done, I do print the letter L was found count times. One, two, many. And one in there. Okay, so the letter L was found 3 times. I have it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Okay, if I'm looking for some other letter, let's say I'm looking for the letter K, alright? K is probably not going to be in there. Okay, so 0 times. Now Python has some built-in ways to count things, to look for things, to search things, to, let's say if you have a list of numbers, to sum, to find the min, to find the max, to find the average. You don't get to use any of them. Okay, none of them. So what I expect you to do is to be able to basically count this. Just write a basic loop, and use the loop with an if to count whatever it is you need to count. Okay, Python has something that will do the magic for you, but I want you to be able to do it from scratch. Okay, so this is basically strings. There's other things we can do with strings. We can split them if we want to, right? So this is a sentence, I guess, if you will. I can do things like split a string. So I can say words is equal to text dot split. Right, and I can show you what words are. Words equals words. So what this thing will do is it will split will split a string by any number of spaces. Okay, any number of spaces. So that means that if I have 1 space here, or if I have 2 spaces here, or if I have 3 spaces here, split is going to go and say, all right, this is one thing, a bunch of spaces, and then this is another thing. And what it will do is it will create I'll split a string by any number of spaces, and come on, click. I guess the click stopped working. And return a list. So I guess this is a good point for you to see what a list looks like. So I'm going to run this thing now. And there's my list. Okay, so what is a list? Well, it's something that has square brackets and it has a bunch of things in it. Could be text, could be, could be strings. In this particular case, it went in there and he grabbed this thing and then split it into first word, second word. Each of these is a string, and it put them on a list. Okay, so I guess this is your first time maybe that you're seeing a list in this class. So again, what is a list? Well, it's kind of like a string. So each of these things on the string, you can call them elements. So this is the element 1, which had as index 0, right? So this is if you're talking about text 0, that's the element 1. This is the element 2, element 3, right? So each element is, the number of that element is 1 less than how you count them, okay? Because it always starts at 0. Always at 0. Alright, so this is my list. So now you know what a list looks like, right? That's my list. So I'm going to copy it real quick. And I'm going to paste that thing right here so we know, right? That's my list. Okay, so this thing also has elements, right? So this is my element 0, or indexes, right? So index, and this is the 0, and this is the 1. And if I wanted to show the first word, I will do print first words is equal to words 0, right? And then I can say print last word is equal to words 1. Okay, and just like I did before, I can use the length, this length function, to determine how many things are in it, so that I can use it to do my indexing. So I say, all right, print last word is equal to words len of words minus 1, right? Always minus 1. And I'll show you why in a second. Oops. Words square brackets. Okay, so there you go. You can see the last word one way using this, and then another way using this. Okay, now what would happen if I accidentally give it a number which does not exist, like an index that does not exist? So the only indexes that this list has are the 0 and the 1. What if I want to go in there and put a 10? I run it, and you get this. Okay, this is the list index out of range. And just like we did with the input, this is an error that Python generates, so you can do the try catch thing if you want to not see this kind of an error. But you should be able to recognize this, and you're going to encounter this a lot. That happens all the time. So many times you don't think through how things are supposed to work, and you give it an index that doesn't exist somehow, and you get the list index out of range. So let me just put this in here. So that is index out of range. Okay, so can't do that. And that's the same reason why I can't go in there and grab this thing and use this. All right, if I use this, what value am I going to plug in? Still awake? If I say words square brackets len words, what value am I plugging in for an index? So words square brackets, what goes here? What's the number? If I go in there and I do print len of words equals len of words, what value is that going to give me? Huh? Say again?
Whatever the user inputs.
Well, no, the user doesn't input anything. I don't have any kind of an input. So, well, look at this other examples that I did. When I had this has these indexes, right? It has indexes from 0 to 10. When I say len of this, what number did this show me? I do print len of text equals len of text, what is this going to show me? How many things are in the how many things are in my text?
It's 0 or 1, right?
There's 11 things. There's from 0 to 10, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right? 11 things. So if I say print len text, right, it will show me this here is equal to 11, right? Which is why I had to go and say basically here, I had to tell it, when I say len text, I'm saying 11 minus 1, which is one way for me to plug in a 10 in there, just like I did here. Okay? So now tell me, what number is this going to show me? Huh? 0? Huh? How many words are in this thing, in this list? 2, right? That's what it is. So when I say len of words, right, this here should show me 2. So len of words is equal to 2. Okay? In other words, now I'm trying to do len of 2. Okay? But there isn't a 2. There's only 1 and a 0. Okay? So if I try to do this, what's going to happen? I'm plugging in a 2 here. And what happened when I did something like this here? I got an index error, list index out of range. Because I don't have a 2, right? I have a 0 and a 1. If I try to plug this in as is, this is what happens. Bam, right? 2, you're trying to put the 2 in there. This is no good. You're trying to do something that, doesn't exist. So you get this error message. Okay, so this is bad. Okay, so that's the reason why I have to do the length of the thing minus 1 if I wanted to show the last thing. Okay, all right. So these are the lists. So let's say let me do another list. So this is basically a list of strings, right? So this here is a list of strings. Okay, and you can have different kinds of lists. So let's say, for example, and I can use, well, let's just start with list of numbers. Okay, so let's say I'm going to call it the num list, and this thing is going to be equal to 1, let's do 10, 20, 30, 40. Right? That's a list of numbers. List of numbers. You can have, well, let's call it an int list. Int list. You can have float list. Float list is equal to, let's say, 10.1, 20.2, 30.3, 40.4. Right? So now it's a list of floats. All right, and this is my list of floats. Okay, so each of these are elements. So if I go in there, so these, so this, come on, this, these are the elements of the list. Okay, this one has an index 0, this one has an index 1, this one has an index 2, index 3. Okay, so if I wanted to print first element equals, I do int list square brackets 0. Alright, and I can do that for the rest of them. Alright, first, second, third, fourth, also known as last, right? So first one is a 0, second one is the 1, third one is 2, fourth one is 3, right? So this number is always one less than how you count the thing. Okay, another way to do this last one, and we already did it a couple of times, is to use the length. I do len, and I do the length of int list, and I have to do -1. Okay? And let's check it out. Alright, so these are my different elements. So far so good. Any questions? Okay. So I can change these. Right? So this was my, oh, and I can show the whole list, by the way. So let me go in there, print, and I'll show you that int list equals int list, run this thing, and there it is. Right? So this here is how I'm showing the whole list. So it's got the square brackets, it's got the commas which separate the different elements, and we can change it. So now I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, all right, well, changing, so this is showing the elements in the list, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the elements in the list. So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, okay, well, my first element, int list 0, is now, I'm going to make it equal to 100. Okay, and then my int list 1, make it 200, and my int list 3 is equal to 300. Alright, int list len of int list -1, or the last one, is equal to 400. Okay?
Are you using int list for numbers?
Say that again?
Are you using int list for numbers?
Int list is a number list.
Just the numbers.
Yeah, so I'm working with this original list right here.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change these numbers. So when I say this here, I'm telling it to change this number to 100. When I do this here, I'm telling it change this here to 200. Okay? And if I go and show you the list, print this here, you're going to see that now it's something else. Okay? So there's my int list. This was originally, this is it after. Okay? So I can change the elements in the list using the index. What else? Okay, so let's do this. What I'm going to do is, I want to do this, for example. So let's say I want to let the user add, I don't know, X numbers to a list, and then find the smallest, largest, sum, average, all that good stuff, right? I can even count how many times the number or a number appears in the list. Okay, so first of all, how am I going to add? I mean, I can't start with a list of, 4 things, because I don't know if the user is going to want to do 4 things or 1 thing or 2 things or a million things. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make, first thing is make an empty list. And what's an empty list? I'll call it a list is equal to just square brackets. Okay, this is an empty list. Yeah. Okay, oh, and then one more thing before I get into this is that, so you can have a list of numbers, integers, you can have a list of floats, you can have a list of words, word list, right, is equal to 1, 2, 3, alright, 4, so that's a list of words, and I can have mixed lists too, so let's say I have a mixed list is equal to 10 to 30.3, right? That's okay too. In other languages, question?
When you create your word list,
Yep.
I see a double bracket, not a double
Quotes?
quote. Yeah, and we use a single quote
Yes,
in there.
yes,
Option?
yep.
Okay.
So I can go in there and I can change this to single quotes and it will work just the same. Because Python can't tell the difference between double quotes and single quotes. It's all string. Okay, so that's just the list of strings.
But
So-
the type of brackets, it doesn't.
Yes, the type of strings. The type of brackets do make a difference. Yeah, there's different kinds of brackets. If you don't have the square brackets, if you see something like this, that is not a list. That's a tuple. And what is a tuple? A tuple is an immutable list. And what does that mean? That's kind of like a string. All right. And what does it mean to be immutable? It means you cannot change the individual characters. So I'll show you what that means in just a second. Remind me. So let's say, in fact, I'll do it right here. So immutable versus, I guess, mutable. Okay. So this here, what I'm doing here is this is a mutable list. Mutable list allows you to change the elements like so. All right, so you can do this kind of a business to a list, right? And even though you could use the indexes to show the individual characters of a string, let me try to do the same thing to the string. So see how I did this? All right, that's no problem. Now let me try to show you. All right, so if I have a string, my text was, I'm just going to copy this thing, paste it down there so you can see it. All right, so this is my string. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is, let's say I want to change want to change the first letter to uppercase H. Okay, so just like I was doing here, right? I'm going to go and I'm going to say, okay, well, text 0 is equal to capital H. Right? I try it, and I get this right here. That's the error. And the error is type errors, str object does not support item assignment. Right? So all these different things, these are called elements. You can also call them items. Right? Elements, items, right? So these are my different elements. And it's telling you that you cannot do item assignment, or basically you cannot get item 0, right? Trying to change the first letter slash first element slash first item, okay, to H, and it's telling you you can't make this first item equal to something. That's what this error is. You cannot do assignment to an item. So you would think that, so that means that you cannot change the individual element or item of a string, which is the immutable. Okay? Versus this other one here, which is mutable. So how can you change it? Well, one way to change this thing is, so obviously this is not going to work. All right? But if I wanted to, I can just say text is equal to this with capital H. Right? There's no item assignment here. Right? So this is allowed because I'm just saying that this variable now is equal to something completely different. But I cannot go and change the individual elements of the string. Right? So text equals text. So you can see that this works. Equal should be in there. So this is your, where is it? There. All right, so I changed it to uppercase H, but I don't want, there might be a case, plenty of cases where, I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to change the whole thing. I want to just go in there, and if I find something, maybe I want to capitalize every first, letter of every first word. Okay, so maybe I don't want to do this. So this is okay. There's no problem with this. And this showed me hello world. So I'm going to put it in there. Right? No error. Okay? But I don't want this. I want to change the individual element, right? So I want to change the H to uppercase H. So how you do that? So to change the element or item of a string, you must convert the string to list. And how you do that? You go and tell it, okay, well, text, you are now equal to list text. And let's have a look at what that looks like now that I said that it should be a list. Text, run it, and now this is a list. Alright, so what did it do? It grabbed the hello world, wherever that thing is, all the way at the top, right? It grabbed this thing here, and you turn it into a list of characters. That's your first, that's your second, right? And I can go in there and I can pull these just the same way as I did before, right? So I'm going to grab this thing here, and using the index just like before, I'm going to show it to you. So there you go. I'm going to run it, and you're going to see that it's still, you know, those two, right? Pulls the H, pulls the D, no problem. So you can work with a string and a list in a very similar way, except the string, you cannot go and change the individual things. All right, on the list you can. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to change the elements. Change element / item or first. Change the first element or item to uppercase H. So I go and I say, all right, text 0, now it's a list, is equal to H, uppercase H. Okay? And then I'm going to show you this thing again so that you can see it. And you're going to see an uppercase H in there. So there it is, uppercase H, we changed it. Okay, so now the next thing that I want to do is, now I'm going to change the string or the list back into a string. So I go and I say, okay, text, which is a list now, right, is equal to join, I think it's quote dot join text. I think that'll do it. And then I'm going to show you print text equals text, and keep your fingers crossed. There you go. All right. So now I turned this list back into a string. Okay. There's no more square brackets. There's no longer comma separating the thing. So that's the gymnastics that you have to undertake in order to get to modify an element of a string. Okay? And now you know what's the difference between mutable and immutable. Okay? So this is it. Okay. But other than that, strings and lists are pretty much, you know, you work with them the same way. Where's my mixed list? Yeah, going back to the mixed list, I'm going to call this one here now list of lists. So Python allows you to put lists inside of lists too. So let's say I'm going to say, all right, this is so I had my int list. So this is list of lists. The first thing is going to be int list. The second thing is going to be float list. The third thing is going to be my word list. And then I can have a mixed list in there too. Okay, so here's what I want to do. So now you help me with this. I want to show the first element, or second, let's do this. Second element from list of lists. How do I do that? Print list of lists, is equal to list of lists, square brackets, what? So what number do I put here for the second element? 1. Excellent. Right? So this is my, again, my indexes, this is index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, right? And this is element, item 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So the index is always one behind the, however you count this thing. Okay, so I want to show this. Okay, great. Now what I want to do is, so if I do this, let's see what it shows. So list of lists 1. Run it. List of lists 1, where are you? Okay, there you go. So this showed me this piece. Right? And I like to put comments in there so I know what I'm working with. Okay, here's my list of lists. I'm just going to take out this piece. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to show this number. Okay, want to show the element 30.3 using list of lists. What do you think I do? I'll copy this. All right, I'm going to add another square bracket and then another square bracket. So now with the second square bracket, I'm going to tell it, okay, which element am I going for? I want to show this one. So again, this is 0, 1, 2, 3. These are my indexes. Okay, so if I'm trying to show this, what number do I plug in? 2. Okay, there's your 2. And if I run that thing, and there it is. Okay, so you can do multiple indexes. You can put a list inside of a list inside of a list inside of a list. You can go deep in the rabbit hole. So now that we got this, let's go back to that other one that I was doing. So we're gonna do, I want the user to enter X numbers into a list and then find all this other good stuff. Okay, so first of all, this is how you make an empty list. And if I run this, and it should show you this, so print a list equals a list, and you're gonna see it as just square brackets. There. Right? So that's what it looks like. It is an empty list. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do add to the list. So if I wanted to add to the empty list, I say a list dot append. Let's say I want to add 10. And then I'm going to do this again. Actually, I'll do it a couple of times first. So this is 10. Then I want to add 20, and then maybe I want to do 30, and then I'm going to show you the list. Okay. So this is my list. All right. Originally, then I add a 10 to it, then I add a couple of 2 other numbers. So what the effect of append is, you're basically just filling up the list. So first you're putting the 10, then you're putting the 20, then you're putting the 30. Okay? So that's the point of append. Okay, you're adding to the end of the list. There's also an insert, which allows you to insert at a specific index. You can also remove from the array. You can remove a specific index. You can remove a specific element. You can get rid of the last thing. You can get rid of the first thing. But we're not going to go do that right now. Okay? So, but this is how we make an empty list, add to it, and now we're going to use this. I'm going to throw that right here. All right? Make an empty list, add to an empty list. So let me copy this. So this one is that. Oops, not there. That's this, and then this one here is this one, and this one was this right here. Okay, so now that we know this, let's see how we're going to make a list and have the user add to it. So I'm going to make a B list, right? Empty list, right? Empty list. And when I'm going to ask the user how many numbers they want to add, something like that. So x is equal to int input. How many numbers do you want to add to the list? Okay, I'm going to make a loop, and let's call this index because it makes sense. In range from 0 to x, steps of 1. And then I'm going to make my I'm going to add to the list. I'm going to say B list, well, something like enter a number. And num is equal to int input, enter your, and then I can do %i, your number %i, right? And then the percent is going to be the index. %i is going to be the index. But not just the index, but I'm going to do index +1. Right? So it doesn't tell you enter number 0, it will tell you enter number 1. I will start at 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay? And then as soon as the user does this, we're going to do blist.append, and we're going to add that number that the user wanted to. Okay, and then when this whole thing is done, I'll do print blist equals blist, and let's have a look at it. All right, so how many numbers do you want to add to the list? 3 numbers. First number 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and there you go. There's a list. Okay. Now, the smallest, largest, sum, and average, all that good stuff. Again, Python has ways for it to find that for you, and you don't get to use any of them, right? There's ways for you. Let's say I want to find sum of this thing in the list, right? I can go in there and say, all right, well, print sum of the list is sum of that list. And Python will do it for you, actually. That's why sum is purplish, and it's because it's a reserved word, and it's actually a function that allows you to not list, B list. Let's try it again. Alright, so I want to do 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3. That's my list. The sum of these 3 numbers is 6. Okay? But that's what I mean. You don't get to use this. All right? You don't get to use this. So my rule is, unless you write it yourself, there's only a few of these that you're allowed to use. You get to use range. You get to use int, input. You know, just the basic things to get things going. But everything else you have to write yourself, because I want you to know the fundamentals. So don't get to use this. But I'm going to write my own. So how do I do the sum of a list? Well, I make a variable sum. I'm going to use the reserved word because you don't get to use it for anything else, right? Sum. And then here I just say sum is equal to sum plus that number that they entered. There you go. Not very hard, right? Just make a loop that goes from the beginning until the end of the list, and then you sum all the things, right? In fact, let me make another loop. I could do this. So once I have entered the things into the list, all right, let's do it separately. So let's say this is the first piece, right? So I wanted to do this. I want to let the user add X numbers to the list. Great, I did it. Now the next thing is this other pieces that I wanted to do. Okay, find the smallest, largest, sum, and average. Okay, so I'm going to make a loop for index in range. I can do the 0 to x to in steps of 1. But since now I already have a list that's ready, I can also use the length of this list. All right, so I'm just going to comment this out, and I'm going to rewrite it for index in range from 0 to the length of my B list, steps of 1. And then in here, I'm going to do a sum is equal to 0. In here, I'm going to do sum is equal to sum plus B list, square brackets, index. And by the way, common name for this variable right here is I. Right? Just, it's shorter than index. All right, I. Okay. So I'm just going to go with I. So that's my sum. And then if I wanted to do the average, right, I can do sum print sum of B list is sum, right? I can do the average print average of B list is I can do sum divided by the length of B list, however many things are in it, right? I can do that. Now let's do smallest. Okay, so smallest, the logic for finding smallest is basically the same as before. So remember the algorithm to find smallest? Algorithm to find smallest was basically make variable smallest equal to the first number, right? And then compare smallest to all other numbers, and if any other number is smaller, that is your new smallest. Okay, so how do we make it equal to the first number? Smallest is equal to B list square brackets what? Which one's the first number? 0. Right? There you go. Then I can just tell her, okay, go through the loop. You know, if I really wanted to, I can do this. I can say sum is not equal to 0. Let's say sum is not equal to 0. I'm going to say sum is equal to the first number. Right? Start the sum at the first number. So that way I don't have to do this. All right? And then I can change my loop to start at 1. Since the sum already has the value of the first number, then you just start from the second on, and then you add all the other ones to the sum, and it'll work the same. But basically, I don't have to start from 0 since I did this. So smallest is equal to the first number. Right, smallest is equal to the first number, and then we're going to check to see if any number, if B list I, if any number is smaller than my smallest, then smallest is equal to that number. That's it. It's actually a little bit easier with lists if you think about it, right? You don't have to do like, oh, which one's my first number? Well, it's the 0. All right, that's just it. Okay. So let's see if I find the smallest. Smallest is smallest. Okay. Maybe I should test this. Hope it works. All right, so I'm going to put a 3 numbers. 3 is going to be the first one, 1 is going to be the second, 2 is the last. And there you go. So the average of these is a 2, sum is 6, smallest is 1. And yeah, what else? What else do I want to tell you? Any questions about any of this stuff? So that's pretty much lists, and they're going to be super useful. Once we start doing data mining, Python is really good for data mining purposes. And what's that? You're going to have a whole bunch of data, just chaotic, unorganized data, and you're going to tell Python to go through all of that, look through it, and then pick out certain things. And most of the times, the way you do these things is you open some kind of a file, you read the lines from a file, you put them in a list, and then you can analyze each of these lines in the file. Maybe it's got a bunch of words separated by spaces, in which case you can use that split thing wherever that is that I showed you, right? You can split things by words, by spaces. You can also split strings by other things, right? So let's say I have a string here. I'll call it a social security number, and that's my social security. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? That many digits. So if I wanted to, I can do a social security number list is equal to SSN dot split, and this thing I'm going to be splitting by dashes. Right? I can do that. I can do print SSN list equals and SSN list. Right? If I have somebody's birthday, right? So our birthday is equal to, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, 2017. Okay? I can do a birthday list. BD list is equal to my birthday split. And what do I want to split this by? Forward slashes. Okay? Same thing I can do with whatever character I want to split by. So if I split this thing, let me show you what it looks like. Print BD list. Oops. Equals. Alright, so that way you can see both of these. Alright, so there's your lists. Okay, but keep in mind that once I split this thing, when you have a list of numbers, so this right here was a list of numbers, right? And I also had a float list. You will notice that if you actually have a list of numbers, there's no quotes around them. But see this here? What do you think that these are? It's a string, right? So if I wanted to try to do some kind of a math, maybe I wanted to, like, you know, add all these different numbers or something, right? The only way for me to add them is if I convert them to integers. So let's say I wanted to say sum of SSN list, right? So my social security list is this right here. So let me just copy it so we know what we're working with. All right, that's my list. So I want to add this number plus this number plus this number. So if I did this is equal to SSN list 0 plus SSN list 1 plus SSN list 2, right? Because those are my indexes, 0, 1, 2. What am I going to get? Print sum of SSN lists. What do I get? 2? Now let's see it. So if I run it, where is this thing? There. Right? It does not do the math correctly because these are strings. So what it's doing is it's actually doing string concatenation, if I can spell it. Right? So it's just getting all these different things and attaching them next to each other without actually doing the math. If I wanted to do the math, let me get this whole thing. And the reason it's doing that is because if you look at your list and you see something in quotes, that's a string. Whenever you're adding different strings, it does not do math with them. It just puts them next to each other. So if I wanted to do the math, then I do, these are integers. So I'll just say, okay, int for this, int for this, and this one too. Alright, so now if I do this, let's see what number it gets. And that is this one here. All right, so if you add up all these three different numbers, that is the actual number that you're getting. So the moral of the story is, if you have a string list, and that's why it's very important for you to show yourself the data that you're working with. Whenever you read something from a file and you turn it into a list, you're going to be working with this kind of a stuff. So just be careful. The default thing that Python tries to do is, or it will do, is just turn everything into a string. Just like the default input was a string, and you have to do an int to turn it into a number. Okay? So we did all this good stuff. I showed you how to look through and count, right? So this one right here showed you how to look through a string and count how many times a certain letter appears. You can do the same thing with a list of numbers, right? I can have a list of numbers, and I can go through that list and look for a specific number. So let me have a look at what else do I want to tell you. So lists, empty list, length, showing, changing elements, lists and loops, searching a list, strings. You already know how to do random numbers. Anyone have any questions on the random numbers? All right, let's do something else. So random list of numbers. Okay, well, there's a couple of them here that actually have you do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this and give you some hints, and that'll be it. Okay, so the first one is, and some of these don't even have to do with lists. This is just like, just get you more practice. So this one has nothing to do with lists. Write a dice game that generates two random numbers between 1 to 6, and you play against the computer. So you get to roll two numbers, right, between 1 and 6, and you get a choice whether you want to keep them or not. So if you want to not keep them, you roll again, you generate two other new numbers. If you still don't want to keep them, you generate another two numbers. And let's say at this point you said, okay, good enough, I want to go stay with these, I want to lose. So you said yes, then the computer is going to roll two random numbers, and whoever wins, wins, right? So 6 plus 3 is 9, which is higher than your 2, so you lost. Okay? Any questions on this? We're good? Okay, just a quick reminder for your random number businesses. This is your what is this thing? 22 int, right? You have to import from, the easiest thing is from random import rand int, and then you make dice1 is equal to rand int from 1 to 6, right? And you're going to keep doing these until the user wants to keep them, right? So you have one dice, you're going to have another dice, right? And you're going to let the user, right? You're going to have something like while true, right? And you're going to ask the user if they want to keep them. Print, you have dice 1 and dice 2. All right. Keep equals input, want to keep them, and maybe you want to tell them yes or no so they know what to enter. And then if your keep is not equal to yes, then you roll again. Alright, or I guess if it is equal to yes, we break the thing. Alright, if they want to keep them, break. Okay? And then for the actual computer, you just generate two random numbers. The computer doesn't get a choice. Okay? So that's this one. 23. Write a program to let the child practice arithmetic skills. The program should ask for what kind of practice is wanted: addition, subtraction, multiplication. Then the program will have a loop for each of the desired operation that lets the user repeat the practice as many times as desired. And you make two random numbers from 0 to 9, and it goes like this basically. So initially you ask the user, what do they want to do? They want to add. Then you make two random numbers, and you ask the student, what is this equal to? If they get it wrong, then you go and you repeat the same exact question But you tell them it's incorrect, and then you repeat the question with the same exact numbers until they get it right. As soon as they get it right, you tell them, okay, good job. Do you want to do this again? If they say yes, then they get to choose again. Do you want to add, multiply, subtract? Two new random numbers now. They get it wrong. You make two new random numbers, and you're basically going to repeat this question until they get it right. Once they get it right, then you offer a choice. Do you want to repeat? No. And then the game stops. So here's your little hint for that. This is P23 hint. Alright, so you have like a num1 is equal to randint from, what is it, 0 to 9? Is that what we said? 0 to 9. 0 to 9. You have a num2 is equal to randint from 0 to 9. Alright, you want to have like operation, right, is equal to maybe int input, want to add, subtract, or multiply, right? Maybe you want to give them a number, so this is the 1, subtract is 2, multiply is 3. We're not going to do division, right? And then if my operation is equal to 1, right, then this is my addition, right? And I go in there and I ask the question. So what is answer is equal to int input, what is %i plus %i equal to, and I do % here. The first one is num1, num2, and so I'm going to keep asking the user what is the first random number plus the second random number for addition, and then while their answer is not equal to the correct thing, right, then I'm going to keep asking the same question over and over. So I can just grab this thing, throw it in there, and I'll say something like incorrect, and then what is, and you repeat the numbers. Okay, and when the whole thing is done, you tell them, okay, now once we're done with this loop, that means that most likely we're done with that thing. Now we can tell them something like repeat equals input, congratulations, or you got it, right? You got it. Want to play again? Yes, no. Right? And then if my repeat is equal to no, then I break the loop. And which loop am I going to break? Well, I don't have one yet, right? The loop to repeat the whole thing will be right here, right? I want to do it right before I generate the two numbers so that I can repeat this whole thing that I have underneath, including this piece. Come on. There you go. All right, so this loop repeats all this stuff, and then in here for the addition you have another repeater which asks you to get it right, and then you get to stop at the end. Okay, so I pretty much gave you the answer. You just got to do, you have to do, do subtraction and multiplication. Okay, and just like I've been telling you, try not to use the clues and the hints unless you absolutely get stuck. Right, so look at the assignment, try to solve it, and if you're absolutely stuck, only then look at my hints. Okay, if you're relying on my hints and you're just following them, you're not going to learn a whole lot. Okay, it's just you have to learn how to problem solve, how to solve these different problems. So this is 23, 24. Smallest, largest, sum average. I pretty much showed you how to do that. So this is your the hint that I had. This is your hint for P24. This is your hint P24. Right? So it's basically the same thing, right? Except instead of the user entering an X is going to be a random number between 10 to 15. Instead of the user entering num is going to be a random number between 10 to 15, 20 to 50, right? So this one is random num between 20 to 50. This one here is random num between, what was it, 10 to 15. And again, don't rely on my hints too much, because I am holding your hand a little bit too much. I'm babying you too much. Okay, so that's 22, 23, 24 hints. Next one, counting letters in a sentence. I already did that for you. That was somewhere up here. This is your P, what is it? Damn it. Right here. P26, 25. So this is your P25 hint. Okay. Next one, count numbers in a list of numbers. So this is similar to these other prompts that we had so far, so I'm not going to give you a hint for this, but you basically just make a list of random numbers. And so this is P25, P26 hint. Okay. And actually, maybe let me just go down back a little bit. So first of all, this is count letters in a sentence. Oh yeah, the user enters the sentence. Okay. So any questions on any of this stuff? Are we good to go? Can you do all these by yourself? Huh? You can try? Okay, we'll find out. Sounds good. So let me just double check that this is the last thing I want to tell you. And then we're going to play around with these things next week. Actually, next week we're going to do functions, which is one of the last piece of the puzzle. Alright, so I showed you about lists, empty lists, adding to the list, length of a list, going through the list with a loop, searching the list, counting elements. I did that. I told you how strings are immutable, how you can convert a string to a list, and backward, how you check the length, search for a character, count letters, concatenation, we did that, and how to make the random numbers and all that good stuff. Okay, so all that stuff is here. You also have my notes from the previous semester and the video, and I'll post whatever you need from today. Oh, there's 26, 27. Oh yeah, 27 I didn't tell you about, but 27 is similar to the previous one. So 26 was count a number in a random list of numbers. 27 is count a letter in random list of letters. Right? So you're going to start with an empty list, and you're going to be appending a letter. And how are you going to be how are you going to be generating these letters? The letters you're going to be generating are going to be from A to F, and you're going to have to use the ASCII table. Okay? So you have to convert each of these. You get the ASCII from, what is it, 65 to something else. Convert that thing using this right here, char CHR65 shows A. Add all that stuff to a list, and then search the list for a specific letter. Okay? And the letter you're going to be looking for is letter B, which is why I'm having you make only letters from A to F, not the whole alphabet. That way you can count the B a few times at least. Okay? So it shouldn't be too hard, and I have hints in there, and I have videos, and so if you have any questions, come see me, send me an email. You know the drill. Okay? I'll post this right now for you. And let me know if you have any questions.